These red flags mean it's time to leave the relationship part. The awakening morning arrives quietly, not with thunder, not with revelation, but with a question. It is the same question that greets us each dawn, when the mind clears and the soul stands, momentarily free from the noise of the world. What will we tolerate today? Before the messages arrive, before the voices of others begin to shape our mood, before expectations, obligations, and emotional storms rush toward us like an incoming tide, there is a brief stillness, and in that stillness, we remember something essential. Our peace does not belong to anyone else. The Roman Emperor, Marcus Aurelius, once wrote in his private reflections, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." These words are not merely philosophy, they are a warning, because many of the storms that destroy our peace do not come from fate, war, or misfortune. They come from people we chose to keep close. Relationships are among the most powerful forces in human life. They shape our emotions, guide our decisions, and influence the direction of our character. When they are rooted in respect, honesty, and mutual growth, they elevate us. But when they are poisoned by manipulation, contempt, or silent erosion of dignity, they become chains. Chains often disguised as love. And the tragedy is this: many of us sense the damage long before we admit it. The soul whispers long before the mind accepts. We feel the weight in our chest, the unease that arrives every time the phone vibrates. The exhaustion that appears after conversations that should have brought comfort. But instead of listening to that quiet signal within, we negotiate with our own suffering. We tell ourselves, maybe it will change. Maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe love requires enduring this. But wisdom asks a different question. At what point does endurance stop being strength and start becoming surrender? The philosopher Epictetus warned us centuries ago. If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. This insight cuts deeper than it first appears, because it reminds us that while we cannot control the actions of others, we are responsible for the boundaries that define our inner world. Every relationship either strengthens our character or slowly dismantles it. And there are signs, quiet signals, red flags that reveal when a relationship no longer supports growth but instead drains the spirit. Recognizing these signs is not bitterness, it is discipline. It is the refusal to allow our inner fortress to be breached by those who do not honor it. Today we walk through these signs together, not with anger, but with clarity, not with resentment, but with strength. Because leaving a destructive relationship is not an act of hatred, it is an act of self-governance. And it begins with the first red flag. Red flag: when respect quietly disappears. Respect rarely vanishes overnight. It fades, slowly, subtly, almost invisible. At first, it appears as small dismissals. Your opinions are brushed aside. Your concerns are treated as exaggerations. Your values become something to joke about. You notice it, but you hesitate to confront it, because the human heart wants harmony. It prefers to smooth over friction rather than expose it. But here lies the danger. Disrespect grows stronger in silence. The Roman statesman Seneca once wrote, "Associate with people who are likely to improve you." Simple words, but brutally honest. A relationship should sharpen our character, not dull it. If we leave interactions feeling smaller than before, less confident, less dignified, then something sacred has already been violated. The tragedy is that many people adjust themselves to survive in environments that erode their worth. They laugh at insults to keep the peace. They tolerate contempt to avoid confrontation, sacrifice their self-respect in exchange for temporary affection. But peace purchased through self-betrayal is not peace, it is captivity. Each morning we must ask ourselves, are the people in our lives helping us become stronger? Or are they teaching us to shrink? The answer is often found not in dramatic conflicts, but in daily patterns. Does this person listen? Do they value your thoughts? Do they treat your time and dignity as something sacred? Or do they behave as though your emotional well-being is negotiable? Because once respect disappears, love begins to decay. Love cannot survive long in the absence of reverence. The mind senses it immediately, but the heart tries to justify it, and that is why discipline is required. The quiet discipline to observe reality as it is, not as we wish it to be. Aurelius reminded himself constantly, if someone despises me, that is their problem. My only concern is not doing or saying anything deserving of contempt. This is the core of emotional sovereignty. We do not beg for respect, we embody it, and if someone repeatedly demonstrates that they cannot offer it, we must be strong enough to walk away, not in anger, not in revenge, but in dignity. Because remaining where respect is absent slowly teaches the soul a dangerous lesson, that our value depends on another person's approval, and nothing could be further from the truth. Our worth is not something granted by another, it is something guarded within. The moment we forget that, we begin surrendering pieces of ourselves to those who never deserved them, and this is only the beginning. There are other signs, other signals that reveal when a relationship is no longer a partnership, but a battlefield for our peace of mind, but recognizing them requires courage. The courage to examine our lives honestly, the courage to confront uncomfortable truths, and, above all, the courage to remember who we are when the world tries to convince us otherwise. The path toward inner strength demands this clarity. And tomorrow morning, when the quiet moment returns before the world begins its noise again, we must ask ourselves another question. What kind of people deserve a place in the fortress of our life? Part 2. When your peace is constantly disturbed, morning returns again. The sun rises whether our hearts are calm or restless. The world begins its rhythm without asking whether we slept in peace or wrestled with quiet turmoil through the night. And this is where discipline begins. Before the day demands our attention, before the noise of messages, obligations, and expectations floods the mind, there is a moment of silent observation. In that moment, we ask ourselves a difficult question: is my life becoming calmer or more chaotic? Because the people closest to us shape the atmosphere of our inner world more than any external circumstance. That they influence our thoughts, they color our emotions, they determine whether our home becomes a place of restoration or a battlefield of constant tension. The ancient teacher, Epictetus, reminded his students of something simple yet profound. If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Why would a philosopher say such a thing? Because peace often requires decisions that the world does not understand. Walking away from emotional chaos is one of those decisions. Many people believe love should feel intense, dramatic, and unpredictable. They confuse turbulence with passion. They mistake instability for depth. But the truth is quieter. Real strength creates stability, and stability creates peace. If a relationship constantly throws us into anxiety, confusion, and emotional exhaustion, something fundamental is broken. Peace should not be rare in a healthy connection, it should be the foundation. Yet, there are relationships where calm moments become the exception rather than the rule. Every day carries tension. A simple conversation turns into conflict, a small misunderstanding becomes a storm. One moment everything feels stable, and the next moment the ground beneath our feet collapses. We begin living in emotional anticipation, waiting for the next argument, the next accusation, the next unpredictable shift in mood, and slowly, without noticing it, our nervous system adapts to the chaos. We become hyper-aware. Every word must be carefully chosen. Every reaction must be calculated. Every silence feels dangerous. This is not love. This is survival. Roman philosopher Seneca once wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." But in certain relationships, suffering is not imaginary, it becomes routine. When peace disappears consistently, the mind begins to erode, our concentration weakens. Our confidence fades. Our emotional energy is consumed not by building a meaningful life but by managing the instability of another person. This is one of the clearest signals that something is deeply wrong, because relationships should reduce unnecessary suffering, not multiply it. The emperor-philosopher Marcus Aurelius reminded himself of a powerful truth each day. The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. But maintaining clarity of thought becomes nearly impossible when someone continuously injects confusion, drama, and emotional storms into our lives. Eventually, we must face a difficult realization. Peace is not selfish. Protecting our inner calm is not weaknesses, it is responsibility. Because if we lose control of our inner world, we lose control of everything that matters. Our decisions deteriorate. Our character weakens. Our direction becomes uncertain. The inner fortress begins to crack. And the tragedy is that many people remain in such environments for years. They tell themselves things will stabilize. They hope patience will transform chaos into harmony, but patience cannot fix patterns that the other person refuses to confront. Patience is powerful, but patience without boundaries becomes self-destruction. Each morning offers us a chance to examine the environment we allow around us, not with anger, not with blame. But with clarity. Does this relationship cultivate tranquility? Does it allow our mind to remain steady, or does it keep us trapped in cycles of emotional turbulence? If the answer is the second, then we must remember something essential. We are not obligated to remain in environments that destroy our peace. Leaving is not failure. Leaving is sometimes the first true act of wisdom, because peace is not something we stumble upon by accident. It is something we protect deliberately, and protecting it often requires courage. The courage to step away from chaos. The courage to disappoint those who benefited from our tolerance. The courage to reclaim the quiet authority over our own mind. But the disturbances of peace are only one signal. There are deeper patterns that reveal when a relationship has drifted far from the path of mutual respect and growth. One of the most dangerous among them hides beneath charm, affection, and carefully chosen words. It is the subtle art of manipulation, and recognizing it requires even greater clarity of mind. That is where we turn next. Part 3. When manipulation replaces honesty, morning arrives again. Another quiet beginning before the world begins to demand pieces of our attention. In this early hour, when the mind is still clear and the noise of other people has not yet entered our thoughts, we have the rare opportunity to see things as they truly are, not as emotions present them, not as attachment tries to disguise them, but as reality quietly reveals them. This discipline of clear observation is not easy. The human mind prefers comfortable illusions over difficult truths. It would rather maintain a fragile peace than confront the possibility that something we once trusted has slowly turned against us. Yet wisdom asks something different from us. Wisdom asks us to look directly, to see without distortion, to recognize when honesty in a relationship has been replaced by something far more dangerous: manipulation. The teacher Epictetus once warned his students with a simple principle: it is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows. Manipulation thrives precisely in this blindness. It creates confusion where clarity once existed. It twists words, rearranges events, and reshapes memory until the truth itself becomes difficult to grasp. And the most unsettling part is this: manipulation rarely begins with obvious cruelty. It begins with subtle shifts, small distortions, tiny contradictions that leave us momentarily uncertain. At first, we dismiss them. Perhaps we misunderstood. Perhaps we remembered incorrectly. Perhaps we are being overly sensitive. But the pattern grows. A conversation happens, and later the other person insists it occurred differently. A promise is made, then denied. A boundary is crossed, but somehow the responsibility returns to us. We begin questioning our perception. Did that really happen? Am I exaggerating? Am I being unfair? This is the silent power of manipulation. It does not attack the body, it attacks the mind, slowly, patiently, until the victim begins doubting their own judgment. The Roman philosopher Seneca once wrote, "Truth never damages a cause that is just." Think about that carefully. If someone consistently twists the truth, avoids direct answers, or reshapes reality to protect themselves, they are not defending honesty, they are protecting control. Manipulation is ultimately about power. The power to influence another person's emotions, the power to avoid responsibility, the power to maintain dominance in a relationship without appearing openly hostile. And because manipulation often hides behind moments of affection or charm, it becomes incredibly difficult to confront. One day the person distorts reality. The next day they are kind, apologetic, even loving. This emotional contrast creates confusion. Our mind clings to the good moments and hopes they represent the real person. But discipline requires us to evaluate patterns, not isolated events. Anyone can behave kindly on occasion. What matters is the underlying pattern that governs their behavior over time. The Emperor Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself to observe human nature carefully. If someone does wrong, it is because they think it right. This insight reveals something important. Manipulators rarely see themselves as villains. In their mind, their behavior is justified. Their lies are necessary. Their distortions are reasonable, which means waiting for them to suddenly recognize the truth may be a long and painful illusion. When manipulation becomes a pattern, the damage to our inner world is profound. Clarity disappears. Confidence erodes. Our ability to trust our own judgment weakens. We start walking through conversations cautiously, unsure which version of reality will be presented next. And eventually, we begin censoring our own thoughts just to avoid conflict. This is where the inner fortress begins to crack. Not because someone forced their way inside, but because confusion opened the gate. But we must remember something essential. Our perception is not something we should surrender easily. The discipline of reason is one of the most powerful tools we possess. The philosopher within us asks, what are the facts? What patterns repeat themselves? What behavior consistently appears despite apologies or explanations? When we observe without emotional distortion, manipulation becomes easier to recognize, and once it is recognized, the next step becomes unavoidable. Distance, not revenge. Not anger, but distance, because a relationship built on manipulation cannot produce trust, and without trust, no genuine partnership can exist. Staying in such an environment forces us to compromise something sacred, our relationship with reality itself. If we accept distorted truth long enough, we begin losing the ability to think clearly, and once clarity disappears, we become vulnerable to every emotional storm that follows. That is why discipline demands courage. The courage to trust our perception, the courage to confront patterns instead of excuses, and when necessary, the courage to walk away from those who attempt to reshape our reality for their own comfort. But manipulation is not the only danger that slowly erodes the soul within a relationship. There is another red flag, quieter yet equally destructive. It appears when one person begins to resent the growth of the other, when self-improvement becomes a threat, when progress is met, not with encouragement, but with subtle resistance. This is where we turn next, because the path towards strength inevitably reveals who truly wishes to walk beside us, and who secretly hopes we remain smaller than we are capable of becoming.